The billionaire's daughter fired her poor mother's friend until she saw what was hidden in the trash can. "Get out of my house, right now!" Claire Anderson's voice echoed sharply across the vast marble kitchen, bouncing off polished countertops and glass walls like a gunshot. The sound felt too loud, too final even to her own ears, but she didn't pull it back. She couldn't. Her face burned red with anger, her jaw clenched so tight it hurt, her hands trembling as she pointed toward the tall oak door that led out of the mansion. Across from her stood Martha Hill. She was a woman in her late 50s, maybe older, with tired eyes that looked like they had seen too many winters and hands roughened by years of work. She wore a faded gray cleaning uniform that hung loosely on her thin frame. The fabric had been washed so many times it no longer held its original color. Her shoes were practical, worn at the soles. Nothing about her looked threatening. Nothing about her looked like a thief. Yet here she was. Her face was pale now, lined with confusion and heartbreak. Her lips trembled as she clutched a crumpled white napkin in her hand, fingers squeezing it as if it were the only thing keeping her steady. "Claire, please," Martha said softly, her voice breaking. "Let me explain." "There's nothing to explain," Claire snapped, her tone sharp enough to cut. "I caught you stealing. I trusted you, and this is how you repay me?" Her words tasted bitter, but she forced them out anyway. Tears welled in Martha's eyes, gathering at the corners before spilling down her cheeks. She shook her head slowly, as if refusing to accept what she was hearing. "I wasn't stealing," Martha whispered. "You have to believe me." "I was born yesterday, then?" Claire shot back. Martha opened her mouth, desperate to speak, desperate to be heard, but Claire didn't let her finish. "Enough," Claire said coldly. "My father pays you well. Don't ever come back here again." The security guard standing near the door hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. He shifted his weight, glancing between Claire and the older woman, but Claire's furious glare landed on him like a command. He moved instantly. Martha took a shaky breath. Her shoulders sagged as if something heavy had finally been dropped on them. Without another word, she placed the napkin gently on the kitchen counter, smoothing it out as though the care still mattered. Then she turned and walked away. Her footsteps echoed softly against the marble floor. The door closed behind her with a dull, final sound. For a moment, Claire stood frozen, her chest rising and falling rapidly. Rage still pulsed through her veins, hot and uncontrollable. But beneath it was something else, something tight and uncomfortable she didn't want to name. Guilt. She shook her head as if she could shake the feeling loose. Then something caught her eye. A small piece of paper peeked out from the edge of the kitchen trash can, just barely visible, tucked beneath coffee filters and empty packaging. Claire frowned. She walked closer, irritation still buzzing through her body, and reached down. Her fingers brushed the edge of the paper. Slowly, she pulled it out. It was a photograph, old, bent at the corners, the surface slightly scratched, as if it had been handled many times over the years. Her breath caught. The picture showed a young woman holding a little girl near a swing set. Sunlight filtered through tall trees behind them, casting soft shadows across the grass. The woman's smile was warm and familiar. Too familiar. Claire's heart skipped painfully. The woman in the photo was her mother, and the little girl was her. Claire's eyes widened in shock. Her fingers tightened around the photo as if it might vanish if she let go. Why was this in the trash can? And then another thought struck her, colder than the first. Why was Martha holding that napkin when she was accused? Her mind raced, memories colliding with questions she didn't want to ask. She turned the photo over. Nothing written on the back, just silence. Before she could make sense of it, the truth began to unravel in her mind like a thread she wasn't ready to pull. Because her mother had been gone for 10 years, and this photo had been taken the summer before she disappeared. 3 weeks earlier, Claire Henderson's life had been wrapped in perfection. At 22, she lived in a mansion that felt more like a museum than a home. White marble floors stretched endlessly beneath towering ceilings. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen stars above hallways that smelled faintly of expensive flowers and polished wood. Every room was immaculate. Every object had its place. Too perfect. Her father, Richard Anderson, was one of the most powerful billionaires in the state. His name appeared in magazines, on news channels, and at the top of donor lists. People spoke about him with admiration, envy, and sometimes fear. But all the money in the world couldn't fill the silence that haunted the house. Claire felt it every morning when she woke up and every night when she went to sleep. The emptiness lingered in corners, in locked rooms, in memories that were never spoken aloud. Her mother. Claire had been 12 years old when Laura Anderson passed away in a car crash, or at least that's what she had been told. She remembered the funeral vaguely, the black clothes, the quiet whispers, her father's distant expression. She remembered waiting for someone, anyone, to explain what had happened. No one ever did. Richard rarely talked about Laura. Whenever Claire asked, he would stiffen, his voice closing off like a door slammed shut. "Some things are better left in the past," he would say. Every photograph of Laura had been locked away in an upstairs study, every reminder carefully removed, as if erasing her presence would erase the pain. Over time, the memories faded, until one morning something unusual happened. It was a Monday. Claire was home from college for the summer, stretched on a cream-colored sofa in the sunroom. Sunlight streamed in through tall windows as she scrolled lazily through her phone, half listening to the quiet hum of the house. The door creaked open. An unfamiliar woman stepped inside. She was older, with gray hair pulled into a tight bun. Her posture was straight but cautious, like someone used to not taking up too much space. She wore a simple gray uniform and held her hands folded politely in front of her. "Good morning, Miss Anderson," she said gently. "My name is Martha Hill. I'll be helping around the house for the next few weeks." Claire barely looked up. "Okay, just make sure my room stays clean and don't touch the pictures on my desk." Martha nodded immediately. "Of course, dear." Something about the way she said it lingered in the air. As the days passed, Claire noticed things she hadn't expected. Martha didn't rush through the halls like the other staff. She didn't keep her eyes lowered or flinch when Claire walked by. Instead, she moved calmly, almost quietly, humming soft tunes as she worked. Sometimes Claire would hear her in the kitchen, a low melody floating through the house, unfamiliar but comforting. Martha also stopped, often. She paused in front of family portraits, studying them with a strange, far-away expression. Her fingers would hover near the frames but never touch. One afternoon, Claire caught her standing in front of the only remaining picture of her mother displayed in the hallway. "Do you remember her?" Claire asked suddenly. Martha turned, surprised. She smiled sadly. "I do, Miss Anderson. Your mother was a beautiful woman, kind, gentle. She used to make the best apple pie in this very kitchen." Claire frowned. "Wait," she said slowly. "How do you know that?" Martha froze, just for a second. Then she lowered her eyes. "I used to work here many years ago, before you were even born." From that day on, Claire watched her. Something didn't add up. Why had her father rehired someone from so long ago? Why didn't Claire remember her? And why did seeing Martha make her chest ache in ways she didn't understand? From the moment Martha admitted she had worked in the house years ago, something shifted inside Claire. It wasn't fear exactly, it was unease, a quiet discomfort that settled into her thoughts and refused to leave. Claire told herself she was being paranoid, that the woman was just an old employee hired back out of convenience. Yet every time Claire passed her in the hallway, every time she heard that soft humming, she felt watched, not in a threatening way, but in a way that made her chest tighten. Martha seemed to know the house too well. She knew which cabinet squeaked. She knew which floorboard near the east wing creaked if stepped on too hard. She knew how Claire liked her tea without ever being told. Once, Claire came downstairs late at night, restless and unable to sleep, and found a cup of chamomile tea waiting on the counter, still warm. "You looked like you needed this," Martha had said gently. Claire hadn't responded. She'd taken the cup, unsettled, and gone back upstairs. Why did this woman know her so well? Why did her presence feel like a memory Claire couldn't quite reach? The mansion, once predictable and cold, began to feel unpredictable, alive, and Claire hated that feeling. One afternoon, the tension finally snapped. Claire stood alone in the kitchen, sunlight spilling across the marble counter. She slipped her gold bracelet off her wrist and set it down beside her phone. The bracelet was delicate, engraved with tiny vines along the band. It had belonged to her grandmother and then her mother. Her father had given it to her on her 18th birthday with a quiet, unreadable expression. It was priceless. Claire hesitated for a moment, then straightened. This was a test. She grabbed her jacket and went for a walk around the estate, her mind racing as she stepped out into the fresh air. The trees swayed gently, birds chirping above, but her thoughts stayed locked inside the kitchen. When she returned 30 minutes later, her heart pounding faster than it should have, the first thing she did was scan the counter. The bracelet was gone. Her stomach dropped. "No," she whispered. She searched frantically. The drawers, the sink, the floor. She rushed through the living room, checked the dining table, the shelves near the entryway. Nothing. The house felt suddenly too quiet. Only one person was still there. Martha stood at the kitchen counter, wiping it slowly, methodically, as if the world had not just cracked open. Claire stormed back into the room. "Where's my bracelet?" she demanded. Martha looked up, startled. Your bracelet?" she repeated, confusion flickering across her face. "Don't lie to me," Claire snapped, her voice shaking with fury. "I knew something was off about you from the beginning." Martha's eyes widened. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Claire scanned the counter wildly. That's when she saw it. The napkin, folded tightly in Martha's trembling hand. Claire's blood boiled. "Is that where you hid it?" she demanded. Before Martha could react, Claire lunged forward and snatched the napkin from her hand. Her fingers tore it open, expecting gold, expecting proof, expecting to be right. But instead, something else slid into her palm. A photograph. Her breath caught. It was her mother again. Laura Anderson, younger, smiling softly, holding a baby in her arms. The background was blurred, but the warmth in her expression was unmistakable. "This is my mom," Claire gasped. "Why do you have this? Where did you get it?" Martha's lips trembled. "I can explain, Claire," she whispered. "Please, just listen to me." "Get out," Claire said coldly, shoving the napkin into her pocket. "You're fired." Martha's eyes filled with tears. "Please," she begged. "I didn't steal anything. You don't understand." "I said leave." Claire turned her back as the guards escorted Martha toward the door. She didn't look back. She couldn't. The sound of the door closing echoed louder than before. Now alone, Claire stood frozen. Slowly, she pulled the photo back out. Her mother's smile stared up at her. And then she noticed something else. In the corner of the photo, partially out of focus, stood another woman, older now, but unmistakable. Martha. Claire's breath caught painfully in her throat. Her mother's friend. Her mother's real friend. And she had just thrown her out. Her heart pounded as she turned back toward the trash can, almost afraid, almost hoping she was wrong. She lifted the lid. Beneath crumpled paper towels and empty containers lay something wrapped carefully in brown paper. Her name was written on it, Claire Anderson. The handwriting was shaky, familiar in a way she couldn't explain. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. Inside was something that would change everything. Claire's fingers trembled as she unwrapped the brown paper. The sound of it tearing felt impossibly loud in the silent kitchen. Her heart hammered in her chest, each beat echoing in her ears as if warning her to stop, to leave it unopened, to put it back and pretend she had never seen it. But she couldn't. Inside the paper lay a small leather journal. It was old. The edges were worn smooth, the corners rounded from years of being handled. The leather cover was soft, cracked slightly along the spine, and when Claire lifted it, a faint scent rose into the air. Lavender. Her breath caught, the same scent her mother used to wear, the same one that lingered on her clothes when she hugged her goodnight, the same one Claire hadn't smelled in 10 years. Her vision blurred as tears filled her eyes. Slowly, carefully, she opened the journal. Her mother's handwriting danced across the first page. "If you're reading this, my little Claire, it means Martha kept her promise." Claire froze. "Martha," she whispered. Her hands shook harder as she turned the page. "There are things your father never told you. If one day you meet a woman named Martha Hill, please trust her. She's not just my friend. She's your guardian in disguise." The words felt heavy, pressing down on her chest. Guardian, disguise. The room suddenly felt smaller, the air thick and hard to breathe. Claire sank into a nearby chair, the journal clutched tightly against her chest. Her mind raced, memories crashing into one another. Martha wasn't lying. She wasn't stealing. She was protecting something, protecting Claire. Her heart pounded as she flipped through the pages. Some entries were short, others were long, filled with fear, hope, and quiet determination. Laura wrote about Claire's childhood, about watching her sleep, about worrying what kind of world she would grow up in. And then, slowly, the tone shifted. "Richard and I have been fighting more often. He says it's business, I say it's becoming dangerous." Claire swallowed hard. She turned another page. "He wants power, control, and I'm afraid of what that means for our daughter." Claire's breathing grew shallow. Her mother hadn't died suddenly. She had been afraid. Her hands shook as she reached the last few pages. A folded letter was tucked carefully inside, sealed with a familiar heart-shaped sticker. The same sticker Laura used to seal the lunchbox notes she packed for Claire every morning before school. Claire peeled it open, her tears falling freely now. "Richard and I had many disagreements before the accident. I feared what his greed would do to you, so I asked Martha to keep an eye on my daughter in case I couldn't." Claire pressed her hand over her mouth to muffle a sob. All this time she had believed a lie. Suddenly, a loud sound jolted her. A car door slammed outside. Claire jumped to her feet and rushed to the window. Rain had started to fall, heavy and relentless, streaking down the glass. At the gate stood Martha. She held her old brown bag close to her side, shoulders hunched against the rain. She looked smaller somehow, older. A cab idled nearby, its engine humming impatiently. Panic surged through Claire. Without thinking, she grabbed the journal and ran. She burst through the front doors barefoot, the cold marble biting into her feet. Rain soaked her hair instantly, plastering it to her face as she sprinted down the driveway. "Martha, wait!" she shouted. The older woman turned, startled. The cab driver glanced between them, unsure what to do. Claire reached Martha, breathless, holding the journal tightly against her chest. "I found it," she said, her voice shaking. "The journal. You didn't steal it. You were trying to protect it." Martha's eyes filled with tears. She nodded slowly. "I couldn't tell you, Claire," she said softly. "Your father made everyone promise never to speak of your mother again. But she made me promise something stronger, to make sure you never forgot who she really was." Claire broke. "No," she sobbed. "I failed you. I judged you. I threw you out." She reached forward and hugged Martha tightly. The older woman froze for a moment, then slowly wrapped her arms around the girl she had quietly protected for years. Rain streamed down their faces, mixing with tears. "I'm so sorry," Claire whispered. Martha smiled gently. "You have your mother's heart, Claire," she said. "That's all she ever wanted you to keep." Hours later, the Anderson mansion no longer felt as cold. The rain had stopped, leaving the windows streaked and the gardens damp, but inside the kitchen, warmth slowly returned. The lights were softer now, casting gentle shadows across the marble counters that once felt intimidating and distant. Martha stood near the stove, her sleeves rolled up, carefully preparing tea. The kettle whistled quietly as steam curled into the air. She moved with familiarity, as though she had never truly left this place, as though the years in between had simply been a pause. Claire sat at the counter, her bare feet tucked onto the chair, the leather journal open in front of her. Her fingers traced the edges of the pages as she flipped through the remaining entries, absorbing every word like a lifeline. Martha placed a warm cup of tea in front of her. "Careful," she said softly, "it's hot."
"Thank you," Claire replied, her voice quiet but steady. She turned to the final entry. "Kindness doesn't always wear silk or diamonds. Sometimes it wears an old apron and smells like soap and cinnamon. Never judge by what you see. Love hides in plain sight." Claire swallowed hard. She looked up at Martha, who was gently stirring sugar into her own cup, her hands trembling slightly from the chill and exhaustion. In that moment, Claire saw her clearly, not as a maid, not as a stranger, but as the woman who had protected her when no one else had. For the first time in years, the house didn't feel empty. It felt like home. 1 month later, the Anderson mansion was different. The walls, once covered in cold, abstract art, now held family photos. Laura's smile shone from silver frames. Claire's childhood drawings were proudly displayed again. There was even a photo of Martha and Claire standing in the kitchen together, flour on their hands, laughing as an apple pie baked in the oven. Claire had confronted her father. It hadn't been easy. His face hardened when she mentioned the journal, his silence louder than any denial. But this time, Claire didn't back down. She demanded answers. She demanded truth. And while not every question was answered, one thing was clear: Martha stayed. Claire insisted her father rehire Martha permanently, not as a maid, but as the family caretaker, someone who belonged, not someone who served. And the photo Claire once found in the trash can, it now sat in a golden frame in the center of the living room. The image of Laura holding young Claire by the swing set caught every visitor's attention. Beneath the frame was a small silver plaque that read, "Kindness never goes unseen." Sometimes the people we push away are the ones carrying the pieces of our past we didn't know were missing. Never judge someone by what they look like.